As the old saying almost goes, those whom the dwarves wish to destroy, they first make mad.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
To say that something is like pulling teeth is to describe an experience as difficult, painful, and something you really don't want to do. In the course of making this video, I lost a filling and half a tooth. To make matters worse, I am English. I know, with this accent. And the English are not exactly known for the number and quality of their dentists, or their teeth, but the experience allows me to say definitively that literally pulling teeth is less like pulling teeth than watching 2025's Snow White remake, a movie that hates itself so much it's a wonder it's not on Suicide Watch. The controversies surrounding the movie are sufficiently well known that the only reason for even touching on them again is to abuse Rachel Zegler, who deserves it, because she was plucked straight from YouTube by no less a master of cinema than Steven Spielberg, who gave her the first of several roles in bad and underperforming productions. Ms. Zegler skipped the usual abuse stage young women must go through in order to make it in Hollywood, with disastrous effects on her moral character. There's something humbling about having the semen of more than 5 producers and casting agents sloshing around inside you. It keeps you grounded. But Ms. Zegler, having been spared these trials, has been allowed to maintain the most damaging delusion a young woman can possess: the belief that she's special. This is a quality possessed by many a wicked stepmother and damn near no Disney princesses, most of which were created in a more innocent time where the demand that women also be decent human beings was not considered sexist. Those times are long dead, at least in the minds of Hollywood types, even if the general audience would quite like to see them return, which is why Ms. Zegler felt entitled and was allowed to go about applying every known way to abort her new movie before it was born. Whether it was trashing the original and everything it stands for, shamelessly demanding more royalties for a movie whose value she has destroyed, wishing eternal damnation on more than half the voting public, or stunningly and bravely standing up for the right to murder Jews without consequence, Ms. Zegler has managed to knock about $10 million off the box office projections every time she's opened her mouth, which is unfortunate as it's the only thing she really knows how to do. Disney itself deserves no end of flack for tolerating and enabling her behavior. It realized far too late that Zegler exists because nobody has ever told her no, which makes her a public menace. Disney belatedly cancelled press events it shipped her off to random European countries to keep her away from journalists. Hilariously, it put out this tweet before the movie released: Ms. Zegler is so insufferable, she genuinely made modern Disney see merit in the idea that women should be seen and not heard. But leaving a shotgun on the table does not excuse the individual who shoots herself repeatedly in the face with it. If Ms. Zegler is a lightning rod for criticism, it's because she perfectly embodies the very worst qualities of an entire generation of young, especially female narcissists. Those demerits are put in especially sharp relief when said young narcissists play characters who embody values most of the world still admires and respects. Where a character like Snow White is played by a character like Rachel Zegler, it's impossible to escape the conclusion that something has gone quite badly wrong with society. Nobody actually wants to see young people go spectacularly astray. Most of us probably hope, if we're feeling charitable, that lessons will be learned and moral character will improve. But since nobody's cared enough to convey the necessary lessons kindly to this insufferable child, it's left to unkind people on the internet to try and smash through years of entitled arrogance. It's left to unkind people on the internet to say, "Rachel, my dear, you are not special. Also, you have more back hair than Harambe. You should probably get that checked." Not that Zegler was the only source of controversy surrounding the film in the years up to its release. Peter Dinklage, having made lots of money playing famous dwarves, wasted no time in pulling the little stepladder up behind him.
The Game of Thrones star, who has a form of dwarfism, slammed Disney during an interview on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, saying that while he thinks the studio took one step forward casting the lead, they took 2 giant steps backward, perpetuating old stereotypes.
I was a little taken back by they're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the story of Snow White.
Snow White, yeah.
7 Dwarfs.
Sure.
So take a step back and look at what you're doing there. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the fuck are you doing, man?
Dinky Dinklage's comments did not sit well with people experiencing heightlessness, 7 of whom were denied the kind of standout role he himself has had no qualms about accepting. They even went on a little protest march against Disney's decision to replace them with what can only be described as monsters. Several of them are filing a class action lawsuit as I speak. Is there anything more progressive than taking an asinine moral stance no matter how many of the little folk you make unemployed and homeless? It's not an exaggeration to say that dwarves built Disney. Given their replacements are the most glaring mistake in a movie made of nothing but glaring mistakes, it's fair to say that, at the very least, they have unmade this movie. The midget giveth, the midget taketh away. And then, of course, there's Gal Gadot, a woman who is to the acting profession what Logan Paul is to boxing. Nobody's quite sure how they got there, but somehow, there they are. Gadot is actually not the worst performer in this movie, in my book at any rate. In fact, I'd go so far as to say she's the most enjoyable thing about it by far. She produces the same warm feelings you get from watching the special ed class at Sports Day. They might not know what they're doing, but oh shucks, don't they just give it their all? Look at her go! This hasn't stopped much of the media trying to pin the movie's failure on her janky performance. Guys, you've got Rachel Zegler right there. She's the equivalent of dropping an anthrax bomb on the press tour. You'll forgive me if I doubt the motives of any so-called journalist who thinks Gal Gadot is the reason this movie flopped harder than Ariel once she hit 30. As far as I've been able to work out, Gadot's sole dalliance with controversy is being Israeli in public at a time when much of the media class, including her co-star, prefers the Holocauster to the Holocaustee. For my part, I think I'll take the quietly dignified but talentless actress who loves her people over the loudly disgusting talentless actress who has no people to love. Now, if this video seems to have got off on a bitter note, that's partly because of my exploded tooth, but it's also because Walt Disney's 1939 masterpiece is so foundational to cinema and Western entertainment more broadly that it's taken for granted. That movie is the best of Disney, or rather, Disney as it should have been. It was made in a time when the phrase updated for modern audiences entailed improving upon, not shitting all over an older work. The first feature-length animated film, it pioneered an entire genre and the technology required to bring it to life. A brilliant man took an incredible risk. Nothing like it had ever been done. He mortgaged his house on the proposition over the warnings of his wife, his business partners, and the conventional wisdom of an entire industry. And it more than paid off. In Walt Disney's Snow White, you see the genesis of almost a century's worth of the best childhood movies. The animal designs prefigure classics from Bambi to The Lion King, and the 7 dwarves prove that ancient folk creatures can be made into the most lovable and recognizable characters in any era. Its heavy use of comedic character gags, necessary to turn a 10-minute read into a near 90-minute film, are a masterclass in imagination. Its incorporation of song makes music inseparable from narrative and thematic messaging, an approach that's taught more children more of value than a billion replays of Frozen's Let It Go. The proceeds from that film created the Burbank Studios, on which Disney is based to this very day. Walt Disney's bespoke honorary Oscar is held aloft by 7 golden dwarves. It's almost impossible to conceive of a world in which the original movie was never made, so integral has it been to Western artistic production for coming on a century. Going back to it is the perfect antidote to any modern remake or insufferable bint cast therein. We went through a lot more of the background on the recent Snow White episode of EFAP, link in the description. There's just something tremendously uplifting about stories of great creative success, just as there is about the works that they produce. I will probably return to these things at several points later in this video, to keep myself sane as much as anything. Not you though, I mean you're here, so yeah, I just assume you're too far gone. But the main main purpose of this channel is to review movies as they come out. We can't put it off forever. It's time to see just how and in what orifices and with what venereal diseases modern Disney has fucked the corpse of its grandfathers. God damn it, roll the tape. Like the 1937 film, 2025's Snow White begins with the opening of a book, only this time it's been, improved by the addition of CGI animals that probably cost a few $100,000 to make. Oh boy, aren't they cute? I just hate it so much. Unlike the 1937 film, where the book gives us the simple and important setup beats, the lovely little princess Snow White, the vain and wicked stepmother obsessed with beauty, 2025 opens with what I am loath to call world building and character establishment, because really, it's neither of these things. Once upon a time, there was a lovely king and a lovely queen, and they got caught in a snowstorm, and the queen had a baby, and because it was snowing outside and Rachel Zegler isn't white, they decided to name her after the weather. This is quite a risky naming convention. On a different day of the year, the queen would be introducing her daughter as my lovely little girl, light southwesterly breeze with occasional showers. The king and queen were good because, communism or something?
The king and queen taught Snow White that the bounty of the land belongs to all who tended it.
That's a nice castle you have there, my king. Would be a shame if somebody liquidated you as a class. They were additionally good because they taught little Snow that used to be white but has since become sludge that her destiny was to lead her people.
She's not going to be safe with the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
And the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
Oh, I have much to say on this topic, but we shall return to it later. Because first, we arrive at the movie's opening ear-splitting din. The 1937 film was full of lovely songs with charming lyrics containing useful lessons and encouragement. I wonder what the refrain of this opening song will teach us. Fuck me, Frozen has a lot to answer for. We've definitively shifted from an era where music and song was diegetically placed and narratively important into one where the main aim in every song is to have dumb little girls screeching wordless tunes at birthday parties. This is going to massively harm the overall tone of the movie because damn near every song in it is trying to outcompete the others to be the next Let It Go number. Uplifting empty bombast with generic hooks that are easy to repeat because the lyrics don't really matter. There are lyrics in the opening song, but you'll search in vain for anything useful or educational in them. They serve a very vague establishing purpose. The kingdom is magical and lovely. Good things grow here, supported by, I guess, an extensive cave system with lots of gems and stuff. Good things grow here because the place has a strong leader, and you, small child, you will be brave and fearless and fair, which will make the good things grow. I mean, yes, we were just told that the bounty of the land belongs to those who tend it. I'm not sure this communist utopia still needs a state or a leadership class. Pretty sure you should have just withered away by now, but fuck it, princesses sell. It's one of the cast iron rules of Bolshevism. The most important character in the opening is, this gets a little bit complicated. It's the father sometimes. It's why he gets to sing directly at the brat while the mother just hangs around in the background. The movie episodically thinks the father is a very important motive for its protagonist. It sort of sets up a typical hero's journey type scenario, find the absent father, but I'm conscious as I say this that I am setting up false expectations, because this features roughly twice in the 90-minute runtime. The rest of the story has absolutely nothing to do with the father, and at some point later, they just stop writing that part of the story. It goes away. It's pretty fucking funny. We'll get there after some more tedious singing. Oh, shoot me in the face. Fucking stop! The narrator finally interrupts this noise to tell us that the king and the queen are very, very proud that their daughter is growing into a fine and fair young princess. But then, oh no, her mom, she dies. That's kind of all we're gonna get. She just gets sick and dies. It's not just good things that grow, it is also tumors. Now you might be thinking, do I detect the evil hand of a wicked stepmother? That's a pretty conventional storytelling device. The wicked stepmother with her wicked poisons wickedly poisons the good king and queen to death, and then she takes over. But no, you stop that thinking. The writers didn't need to do it, and nor do you. Nothing of the sort occurs. The mother is dead because she dies. That is all you need to know. It is all the movie will give you. She won't be mentioned again. The father is a slightly different story. The narrator tells us that the king and the princess were heartbroken, but then Gal Gadot showed up and she's hot, so the king forgot he was heartbroken and he married her. Then he went off to fight in a foreign war and he never came back. It's about as close an approximation of the older works as we get in this movie. The queen's magic power stems from her beauty, and she keeps the mirror around to protect that power. Because for now, fairest of them all has its conventional meaning. She asks the mirror essentially if she is the hottest witch in town. And the mirror says,
"You slay, queen."
This is very important because if the meaning of the word changes, if, for example, we are using fair in the nicest and kindest sense, then obviously this entire setup is unworkable. The narrator told us right at the beginning of the movie that the queen is evil. The little character establishment pendant that Snow White's father gave her, listing off all her essential character traits, tells us that she is, by the other definition, the fairest person in the land. But if we are using the other definition of the word fair, the good and kind and moral sense, well, that doesn't work because the queen is the evilest person there is, and the magic mirror cannot lie. If that is the operative meaning of the word fair, the mirror would have to say,
"No, you evil bitch, you are quite literally the least fair person in this city. I don't know why you bothered coming all the way here from a foreign land. The only way you can be the fairest person around is if there are no other people around. So I guess you'll just have to kill everyone like your season 8 Daenerys. God fucking damn it, I hated that show."
Cheese grater, don't be a hater. Will this point be relevant later?
Yes!
The queen, it is implied, tricks the king into thinking that his kingdom is threatened by another kingdom to the south, and because she has his balls in her hand, he agrees to go off and fight it. In his absence, she seizes power, and all this poses weighty world-building questions that this movie is by no means equipped to handle. Does this magic kingdom even have soldiers? Is there a history of warfare? How do you command soldiers if they are also fully autonomous post-scarcity luxury communists? Did nobody anywhere ask any questions about the foreign policy implications of all this? Why would the post-scarcity luxury communists then lie down and meekly accept the tyrannical rule of an evil bitch queen who hates and bullies them and steals all their luxuries for herself? Before he leaves, the king gives little wet Drizzle the locket pendant with her essential character traits written on it. I mean, I'd say this goes on to be a plot device, and it kind of does. It's just that that particular plot doesn't really lead anywhere. The pendant's only really here to list all the things we should like and admire about the protagonist. Why bother showing any of these things when you can just tell? Curiously, the narrator then tells us that the queen seized power by turning the farmers into soldiers. But wait, I thought the king already did that. I mean, didn't he just ride off to fight in a war? How did she convince them to do this while also stealing all their riches? Is this some evil dark magic? Are they under a spell? I mean, they kind of have to be under a spell because they have no incentive to do so otherwise. And yet, if they are under a spell, how will our heroes overthrow her without violence and bloodshed and counter curses? We can't be having violence and bloodshed and counter curses in a children's movie. I wonder how they'll address this thorny issue later.
They won't!
I said later, you fuck. The bitch queen of Angmar cuts off Snow White's ponytail and turns her into Lord Fairquad. Do you get it? Does that scan? Because she's fair and she looks like Lord Farquaad, so, you know, Lord Farquaad, fuck it, we're running with it. She makes little Lord Farquaad work as a maid, but the narrator tells us that Lord Farquaad remains safe from the Queen's cruel jealousy, so long as the mirror continues to operate on one very precise definition of the word fair.
As the years passed, the people nearly forgot there ever was a princess named Snow White. And in truth, Snow White nearly forgot herself.
Oh fuck, it's you. This line, by the way, about everyone, including herself, somehow forgetting she ever existed? Well, it makes no sense. We're expected to believe that all the people register and lament their worsened lot in life, but nobody remembers or pines for the last living link to the rulers they actually liked? The line is inserted here and will be forgotten about in short order because the script is about to have Lord Farquaad bump into this chap here, and it is important that he doesn't yet know who she is. This chap here is the dirty, smelly scoundrel who replaces the prince. In 1937, you see, people at Disney, and in the country as a whole, by and large didn't care about the intricacies of the class system, and wealth and status and a high social station were seen as good things it was perfectly acceptable to strive for. Disney princes aren't really princes in any definite political sense. They are seldom even characters. Where they are characters, it is their character rather than their station that is admirable about them. In other versions where the princes don't quite rise to the level of character, and here the original Snow White certainly qualifies, the princes serve as stand-ins for aspiration. For boys, become the prince. For girls, win the prince. By extension, and particularly for girls, the prince is also a surrogate for universal morality. Snow White earns the prince's affection in the original story because she deserves that reward. The universe has given her what her actions and comportment warrant. Things have changed a little bit since then, and while the country stubbornly lags behind the media in the Enlightenment race, Hollywood writers who get paid far too much for the terrible jobs they do are now keen class warfare LARPers. Because they're all bored and comfortable and talentless and jaded enough to pretend that revolutions are a really good idea, the object of their affections has switched from the high point of establishment culture, the prince as the expression of success within the system, to the low point of an imagined counterculture, the rogue, the rebel, the revolutionary as the archetypal repudiation of the system. Anybody who's ever met a real rogue, rebel, or revolutionary knows that they are very rarely desirable. Too many of them think that showers are bourgeois, and even the well-put-together ones become unattractive once you've spent long enough in their company. You quickly realize that what they are, really, is overgrown children locked in a state of permanent adolescence. They don't have positions, philosophies, nor really do they have ideologies. What they have is a posture, a fashion statement, a voguish, rebellious affectation which they adopt, if they are men, to compensate for inadequacy, and if they are women, for insecurity. These people are, with very few exceptions, dysfunctional failures. What they want, what they affect to argue for, is a system in which bad habits become successful qualities, and successful qualities become bad habits. It's not me who's to blame for my lot, it's the system. If the system were fairer, I would be on top. That Hollywood types keep insisting people like this are desirable says a lot about the psychology of the current set of writers. They'll all be successful poets once the revolution happens, just you watch. But the mass audience still shows encouraging signs of stubbornness, if not princes who are, in fairness, a little bit antiquated and altogether too Hollywood in their riches and their mannerisms and their moral degeneracy. The general audience still seems to prefer that love interest characters be solid, dependable, honorable, and hard-working sorts. This is the case in Frozen, for example, where the prince is superficially attractive but turns out to be a bit too Hollywood. Rich, spoilt, conniving, and a shit. While the male love interest, Kristoff, is the rugged, hard-working, trustworthy, salt-of-the-earth type that girls should grow up to value. The adult writer who fantasizes over the rogue qua rogue rather than the man beneath the title is not really an adult. They're a stunted teenager who never learned to spot true virtue in the opposite sex because the stories they grew up with are the stories they themselves now tell, a subject to which we shall return later. But this this not a prince? I mean, I genuinely, no idea, don't know what his name is, and I'm not gonna look it up. Purple Pain here is introduced stealing potatoes and assorted root vegetables from the pantry. Lord Farquaad must be disabused of silly notions like legality and property rights, so we get this exchange.
Looks like the queen has plenty already.
Oh, I see. So that's your excuse for stealing.
My friends are hungry. I'm hungry. That's my excuse.
This is an important part of her growth. Where in 1937 the prevailing attitude was that the right thing should be done because it is right, the modish 2025 philosophy is that rules are economically selective. Stealing isn't bad when the victim is deemed by anyone loud and or popular and or attractive enough to have too much property. The movie's fantasy rules only mitigate this a little bit because the evil queen is indeed a hoarder, and we are told, though never really shown, that the people outside are hungry. But when Lord Farquaad says she'll talk to the queen and ask her to be a little bit nicer to her people, this is unambiguously portrayed as a naive, childlike attitude to the state that she must grow out of. The rogue thief unquestionably has the right of it. The movie's sympathies are clear. The problem is, of course, that this narrative only sustains itself because it is itself childish and naive. Since it chose to introduce questions of tyrannical rule and poverty, it's perfectly possible, it should be expected that we ask, okay, but how does this actually work? What do masses typically do when their rulers starve them? How does the queen maintain control given she has a grand total of 2 guards and all the professional soldiers presumably died with the king? What keeps the people put down and oppressed when they all remember and yearn for the rule of the beneficent king? Why is the rest of the world completely static and unpersoned when you're adding things to the narrative that really require they not be? I don't really care about spoiling anything because this movie is already liquid feces. We'll see later that all Lord Farquaad has to do is return to the city wearing revolutionary red, at which point she is instantly recognized and say, "Hey, remember me?" And then they all line up behind her for an inexplicably bloodless coup. It's kind of fitting, I guess, as an expression of these writers' worldview. The plebs are basically base creatures. They're a little bit like sheep. They're waiting for the pretty young lefty woman to lead them to their salvation, which they could never envision or bring about themselves. And here's the thing. You actually can't tell me, or, well, you can try, but you'll fail, that the movie is allowed to be this childish because it is intended for children. If, as a writer, you make overt socio-political points in a children's movie that you believe to be correct in the real world, and your response when questioned is, "Oh, but of course I'm not going to explain it, it's for kids," then you are either a manipulative little fuckweasel who knows exactly what they're doing, or you should be made to retake the 3rd grade.
The people upstairs want to share with people like us.
The princess would. Snow White. All she does is think of how to help her people.
Oh, well, then you should let her know. At some point, it might be useful for her to stop thinking. Maybe start doing.
Oh boy, I think I detect a call to action. Lord Farquaad does indeed suggest to the queen that she be nicer to her subjects and let them have, apple pies.
Pies are luxuries. They don't need luxuries. It confuses them.
What is this line? Oh boy, we can't distract the serfs with luxury pies. Fuck off, movie. Lord Farquaad suggests that small and sweet things show people that there is more to being alive than mere subsistence. Which, well, I mean, doesn't that make the queen's point? If your life is, in reality, subsistence, and the luxury pie is designed to take the edge off, isn't it just distracting you from the truth of your condition? Come on, Lord Farquaad, you should know your marks. Criticism of the luxury pies is in embryo the criticism of the Vale of Tears, of which the luxury pie is the halo. Criticism has plucked the imaginary apples from the pie, not in order that man shall continue to eat that pie without fantasy or consolation, but so that he shall throw down the pie and pluck the living apple.
You know, I really don't remember you being this opinionated.
Yeah, that line works on a number of levels.
Fearless, fair, brave, true. How quaint.
One day you'll understand how useless those words are.
Is it worth talking a little bit about the Queen's motives? Because I genuinely don't understand what they are. I think the line in the opening narration about her being merely evil is intended to fill in all the gaps for us. Why did she come to this kingdom? Evil. Why does she hoard potatoes? Evil. Why does she hate the poor? Evil. Why does she do anything she does? Evil. The problem arises because the movie wants to keep enough about the original to qualify as a simulacra while stripping all of the meaning from the scenes that it steals. For evil to explain the Queen's whole reason for being here, it follows that she was evil before she got here. Whereas in 1937, though the Wicked Queen is described as wicked in the opening book, her vanity and then her jealousy are her necessary and sufficient motives. We pick up at the midway point in her story, with the change in her character and outlook being instigated by the change in Snow White, who offends her vanity and leads to its becoming jealousy. Here, because the film doesn't want to reduce women to competitions over looks, it hollows out this most essential beat to the point of nonsense. It makes Lord Farquaad incidental to the Queen's story. She just becomes the temporary focus of a pre-existing villainy. That the whole point of the original story was to caution women against reducing themselves to their looks seems to have been missed by these illiterate fucking wombles. The movie vaguely recognizes the absence it's created, so it does attempt to give the Queen something like a belief system.
Ravishing, isn't it?
Yes, Your Majesty.
One is weak, useless, fragile. The other, hard, unyielding, everlasting, flawless, beautiful. My subjects don't want a flower, they want a diamond.
Which is more of a gimmick than it is a philosophy, and which again doesn't answer any of the why questions the film invites. So what, she's an evil bitch because her subjects want a strong ruler? But why are you even here to begin with, you confusingly beautiful hag creature? Do you just wander around the world looking for kingdoms to oppress? Again, why?
Because she's evil.
But it's not fucking good enough, goddammit! The weird conversation is interrupted when a guard brings in Purple Pain, who he caught pilfering supplies, even though we were in the room while he was pilfering those supplies and the guard was nowhere to be seen.
Are you one of the bandits that gather in the forest stealing in the name of the king? I'm the boss. Find his home and burn it to the ground.
Or just kill him? You know, you're supposed to be pure evil, remember? He's just confessed to high treason. He leads a rebel faction that's important enough for you to have heard of it. Run a pike up his ass and mount him to your walls.
I understand the need for justice, but please, this isn't fair.
Foreshadowing.
What did you say?
Okay, look. I like Gal Gadot, she's great! She's just so unbelievably bad at this that it's genuinely charming. Like, she makes these scenes so enjoyable, and because she really doesn't know what she's doing, you actually get quite a lot of unexpected variety from her. Absolutely nothing is in the right place, but it is morbidly fascinating to watch. Compare it to the Zegler creature, who I'd say gives an equivalently bad performance, but without the redeeming clumsiness. Zegler has precisely one mode across this entire movie. That mode is theater kid admiring her own reflection. Her one goal in every single scene is to convey how pure and virtuous she is, and this translates into an insufferable butter wouldn't melt earnestness where the eyebrows and the jaw do absolutely all of the work. Her eyebrows and her jaw only have 2 positions each though, so across more than 90 minutes of movie, you're lucky if you get even 4 variations on my shit smells like roses. Walt Disney did a better job in the 1930s, and he basically had to learn how to animate a woman from scratch. Even putting aside all the noise around the movie, everything you already knew about Ms. Zegler, as I usually try to do when approaching a review like this, still, every time she's on screen, it's like someone's rubbing sandpaper on your balls. Absolutely no one should be so taken with their own virtue. It's a kind of vanity that befits the evil queen.
You think it's good to slap a woman?
No, I don't think it's good.
You don't think it's bad? I don't think it's that bad. I think that it depends entirely on the circumstances and if it merits it.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but, you know, I understand the temptation.
Remove his coat and boots and bind him to the gates to freeze.
I fucking can, she's glorious. Also, what even is this plan? We were outside just a few minutes ago. It's a fucking mild spring day. Children born in this weather will be called maybe sweater but no coat today.
Look at yourself. Go on. Speak to your people. What will you tell them? That you've made them dessert?
Give this woman an Oscar, just do it now! Sadly though, this is our cue for another song, which obviously competes with the Good Things Grow one earlier in the movie, in the fucking sub-Broadway drill through your skull look at my tonsils grandiosity stakes. But which is, if anything, worse, because it actually can't be sung by the character singing it while she's singing it. What I mean by that is that Lord Farquaad in this moment doesn't have the thoughts she expresses in this song. Because if she did, she wouldn't be here singing it. The song is called Waiting on a Wish, and it basically conveys meta-thematic awareness. Representative lyrics include, I'm waiting on a wish beneath 1,000 treetops, and as a silver sky stops, I send a whisper to the water. I intrude at this moment to point out that she sings this in a castle on top of quite a large hill, and she ends it atop the castle walls. She's not beneath a single fucking treetop. We know she's not because we get well vision and we can quite clearly see there are no fucking trees above her. But that's not the point I was making. The lyrics continue, little girl by a wild wood as she tries to be someone good, but in the shadow the kingdom's caught in, somehow fairness is long forgotten. That doesn't rhyme. So will she rise or bow her head? Will she lead or just be led? Is she the girl she always said she'd be? After much warbling and more look at me singing, which I fucking despise because it's not how Disney songs or even fucking musicals are supposed to work, we then get someone who could finally start speaking with a fearless heart, someone who just might be brave, someone no one needs to save. Essentially, the song has Snow White tell us the thematic conflict of the movie. But because she actually answers her own problems, because she's actually aware of her own hesitation and its cause and its solution, and because she can already envision the character she's going to become at the end of the movie, the song boils down to her saying, in essence, I'm gonna be a leader. I could do it now, but the script says it's not time, so maybe later. Sorry, peasants. I guess you'll have to starve a little bit longer. But it's all right though, because I bet you all voted Trump, you evil bastards. The movie's idea is that, like in the original, she is not the author of her own exile. She has to wait to be cast beyond the first threshold, even though the song kind of suggests that she doesn't. This exile will allow her to grow and become the leader she already knows she can be, and probably would be already if she wanted to be, so enabling, in a kind of cheap hero's journey pastiche, her return with the elixir, vague self-confidence, to transform the world. This places a huge amount of weight on the people forgot Snow White part of the story from earlier, but if you were paying attention, we've already discarded that. When she bumps into Purple Pain in the pantry, he doesn't say, the princess? Who's that? He says, the princess? That's a name I've not heard in a long time. Meaning he does remember Lord Farquaad. But if the people remember her, then all she has to do to earn their allegiance is to literally walk out of the gate right now and say, hey guys, it's me. You love me, don't you? Everyone loves me. Let's go kick that old bitch out of the castle. And yet, we've got to stretch this out for 1 hour and 40 minutes. So we have to have her not do something that not only would work if she tried it now, but importantly, something she kind of already knows would work if she tried it now. This is the fucking face. It's the I am the avatar of women. I am teaching young girls self-confidence because I'm fucking amazing face. I fucking hate it. Stop loving yourself so much. My fucking colon is cringing.
It insists upon itself, Lois.
It really, really does. My God. Incidentally, I've heard people compliment Zegler's singing, and it's true, she is impressive. She's the only singer in the movie who does more than 90% of the work. Most of the others could well be singing just one note and letting the auto-tune do all the rest. But impressive is the only thing she really knows how to be, and it's actually not the sign of a well-rounded singer. Granted, it might be that she's just been given songs that are designed only to be impressive, so she's not been given an opportunity to show other equally important modes and techniques. But I'd still say this heavily qualifies the compliments. This movie uses so few of the original songs that it's actually hard to draw direct comparisons to illustrate the point I'm making. I'm going to pick what to me is the most memorable recent example, probably because I made a very similar point about it in my Little Mermaid video.
The poet Seamus Heaney drew a distinction between craft and technique that I always find useful in explaining the difference between essentially hitting the right pitch and hitting the right mood. Craft, he said, is what you learn from other verse. Craft is the skill of making. In this case, Hailey Bailey's craft is pretty much spot on.
That's a lovely, lovely voice.
Technique, by contrast, is, to use Heaney's words, not only a poet's way with words, his management of meter, rhythm, and verbal texture, it involves also a definition of his stance towards life, a definition of his own reality. Poets, of course, have a tendency to arrive at definitions via circuitous means, but applying the technique distinction to Bailey's performance in this film, her striving after craft perfection results, if anything, in a too perfect rendition of these classics. Too heavy a focus on craft leads to needless complications that say, listen to me, rather than listen to what I'm singing.
Wish I could be.
They're not overly present in the earliest part of your world. They do sneak in later on in the film, allied with a slight over-reliance on belting, which is a technique really meant to convey power and not a huge amount else. And you get a more soulless version compared to the original. Soulless precisely because it strives for too much soul as a genre. Probably the clearest example to demonstrate this point, it's clearer because it's worse than Bailey's performance, I should add, is Rita Ora's recent butchering of Running Up That Hill. I butchered it myself months ago on my second channel, link in the description if you fancy a cringe. Everything about these musical performances strives for bigness, for grandness, a more conventionally powerful rendition that sacrifices nuance, flaws, and subtlety for perfection, and so, paradoxically, results in a less perfect performance.
This is an example of impressive technique being deficient to the task. Original Ariel trails off, part wistfully, part overawed by the scope of her dream, part cowed by how remote it seems. The song almost ends with speech, not song, because what Ariel's voice actress understood, and Hailey Bailey did not, is that she was playing a character, and the song was an expression of that character's inner life. The vocal performance, which is impressive at appropriate moments, is still telling you something about Ariel. Hailey Bailey's rendition, though, which swaps the trail off for the kind of annoying run typically heard when egotistical women are invited to ruin the national anthem, is classic look at me singing. You're supposed to sit there thinking, gee, that Hailey Bailey's got a good voice, not, oh god, poor Ariel, she's really yearning. Unless you're paying attention to the lyrics, and really they're not worth it, what is Lord Farquaad actually thinking and feeling when she belts out these notes with her head to the sky? Because this is tonally indistinct from the generically triumphant happy pop ballad refrain in the opening song, and yet we're supposed to be at a very different point in the story here. Funnily enough, the little girl who plays young Lord Farquaad does the job Zegler doesn't do. She she is actually portraying the character in this scene. Young and uncertain, being educated, trying to remember the right words to say, perhaps not fully understanding them yet, but aware that something important is being said. There's more character in the little girl's one performance than you get from any one of the Zegler creatures songs across the entire movie. And I bang on about this, partly because it's just aesthetically important, partly because it saps the character out of the movie, and partly, but importantly, because it's another example of the film's unintended theme, that narcissism is okay when I do it. That this is about me, the actress, not the character I'm playing. Anyway, more warbling, belting, look at me, I'm a brilliant singer, yada 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 yada. Lord Farquaad goes outside and unties the very loose fabric that binds purple pain to the front gate. No, there are no guards watching this self-professed leader of the loyalist rebel bandits. Why the fuck would there be? She then summons a bit of bread from her vagina? I don't know. Like, she definitely wasn't holding it earlier. She must have pulled it out from somewhere, and she gives it to him. And you might be thinking, so this is her deciding to do something. This is her becoming brave, becoming the leader she's meant to be.
Tell me what it's like out there.
Why don't you come and find out?
I can't.
Or not? The movie absolutely hasn't earned charity, but I guess this is supposed to be a kind of baby steps moment. She is beginning to rebel, but she's not quite ready to lead the revolution. The revolution to restore the monarchy. You know, this is an unusual state of affairs. I'm not sure that's happened in Europe since General Franco.
You have to go. Run.
You know, I'm not seeing very much poverty and starvation here. Everyone seems to be working. That person there's got 2 whole bags full of stuff. Where's all the death and the misery? I need more death and misery. And no, the film as a whole doesn't count. No.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest of them all?
Oh, thank fuck.
Famed is thy beauty, Majesty. But wait. A lovely maiden I now behold, awakened to the world.
For I see, she is more fair than thee.
But you forgot to say Kal-El. By the way, if the mirror just said that Lord Farquaad has awakened to the world, it's kind of getting ahead of itself. The whole point of the preceding is that she is still not ready for that yet. She's nearly there, but she's not quite there. And she still has the Lord Farquaad hairstyle. She is objectively one of the least fair people in the world. Unless the mirror is already playing semantics. Fuck it, internal consistency be damned, this is just another cut and paste scene from the original, and absolutely none of those are slotted in gracefully. This is actually one of the better examples. Just wait till we get to the redundant plot-stopping dwarves. This, of course, is the moment the Queen decides to have her huntsman take Lord Farquaad out into the woods and shoot her in the fucking head.
Waiting on a wish.
Pretty much, yep. But no, in reality, he's to take her out into the woods and knife her, then bring back her heart in a box as proof of death. In the original fairy tale, it's actually not the heart the Queen wants, it's Snow White's lungs and her liver, with the implication being she might want to consume them. This draws on the pre-modern belief that you take on the qualities of the things you consume, which you still find today in Chinese and African traditional, read bullshit, medicine. Though it might explain why Trump's skin tone is the shade of a Big Mac, the huntsman initially objects, but he is persuaded by the awesome power of Gal Gadot's acting.
I'm your queen. It was Snow White who set the bandit free. She's plotting against me.
Fuck it, I'm sold. Do you want me to kill any other kids while I'm out? Off they go to pick apples. Lord Farquaad gives one to the huntsman, which begins his simp arc.
You're very kind.
Then he pulls a knife on her, and what the fuck is this fucking face? You see what I mean? I really don't see why Gal Gadot gets all the mockery and ridicule for her performance. At no point in the movie does she look even half as contextually retarded as this, which is really saying something because, you know, she looks incredibly retarded in almost any context.
She's a liar. You were never told the truth about your father.
I'm sorry, what?
Please, before I change my mind!
No, I'm sorry, what? Firstly, what the hell do you mean before I change my mind? I do understand it's Rachel Zegler, and I'm sure there is a positive correlation between proximity, duration, and urge to kill, but really, you shouldn't be resisting the urge to kill her here. You're freeing her because you have a principled objection to the deed and you admire her fairness. What would make you change your mind? But then, more pressingly, where the fuck did this sudden father thing come from? You're telling me that despite everyone knowing and loving him, despite everybody pining for his return, despite the fact that years have passed, no one has ever suggested until now that the Queen lied about his death? It's such a random thing to throw in, especially when you know where it's going, which is to say nowhere. It's going absolutely nowhere. It's first raised about a quarter of the way into the movie. It gets forgotten about so Lord Farquaad can boss some midgets around. It returns as a brief motive. It gets forgotten about so she can boss some bandits around. It returns then as a question, and the answer at the end, which is well before the end of the movie, is, no, he's still dead. He's very much unalive. Oh god, we'll deal with that nonsense later. Lord Farquaad plunges into the woods in a drab and boring sequence during which the only noteworthy event is that she is almost raped by Treebeard. She meets a deer, she gurns at it, and this is called acting. Someone's told her at some point this is an attractive expression. It's really not. And then, in pretty short order, she finds herself in the dwarf's house. She has arrived at Dinklefell, and she decides it's time for a nap. I would cite this sequence as a great example of how these live-action remakes lack all the imagination of their animated predecessors, making them essentially deficient and leaving you to wonder just why the fuck they keep making them. The animals in particular, being photorealistic, lack all the character of their forebears, though I don't think we'll ever get a worse creative decision than fucking Flounder in The Little Mermaid. Look at him, he's just a fish. Fish don't have expressions. But since the dwarves are coming and they're a much better example of all of the above, I won't. I will note two other things though. The first is that in the 1937 film, Snow White charms the beasts of the forest with song. She is nice to them, disarmingly so, and nature itself recognizes these qualities in her. In 2025 though, she just rocks up in the forest and the animals take her directly to the dwarf's house because they read the script, so they know that's where she needs to be next. The most you can say is that her virtue and kindness is just assumed by the universe, which is fucking arrogant, but probably a fair reflection of what Rachel Zegler actually believes. On entering the house in 1937, she is polite even when nobody is there. She's saddened to learn that the dwarfs have no mother, that they are in effect orphans, which is important in establishing the role she will go on to play for them. And cleaning up for them is pretty much the first thing she does, because maybe if she does nice things for them, she thinks they might let her stay for a while. She enlists the help of the animals, but is fully involved herself. Only after she's escaped death, traversed the forest, befriended the animals, found the house, cooked and cleaned, which is a pretty solid day's work, does she then go for a nap, lying across several of the dwarves' beds. In 2025, by contrast, she just walks in and steals their beds, because she's a bitch. And then we get our first look at the satanic creatures. Oh god, look, Peter Dinklage, look what you've done. You've summoned monsters from the depths of hell to doom us all. Besides adding terror, Disney has made a few additional changes to the magical creatures. They now have magic hands that glow and illuminate the gems in the caves. I have no idea why they did this, because it never comes up again. It's just an excuse to vomit colors onto the screen. And where Heigh-Ho used to be essentially a little working song and a counterpart to Snow White's Whistle While You Work, this one just goes on and 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 on it goes. The original is a little over 2.5 minutes long. The new version is closer to 5 minutes and it feels longer. It is garish and excessive, and there's so much cheap magical world state nonsense going on that your attention is dragged away from the characters the song is supposed to introduce, even though half the additional runtime comes from them working their own names into the song and everybody else saying, I know. Who is this for? Why is it here? What are we doing? The dwarves return home and they find Lord Farquaad squatting in their house. They have the cheek to be scared of the thing in their beds when they are some of the most terrifying creatures ever put to screen. Dopey, who was by far the most endearing of the lot in the original, has been transformed into whatever the fuck this is supposed to be. And rather than a lovable simpleton, we are shortly to learn that he's essentially been bullied into silence by the rest of the dwarves, so his arc is to discover his voice, which won't be relevant for anything beyond itself. This is how storytelling works, folks. You take older things, you make them worse for no obvious reason, you spend hundreds of millions of dollars on them, and then you move on to the next disaster. This also has the effect of de-emphasizing the other individual and general arcs the dwarves once had. Walt Disney's brilliant innovation was taking a mere collective from the fairy tale. The dwarves were never named individually, they had no individual personalities, they functioned as and drew their identity from their group, and he individuated them. Each of them had a name. The name was tied to their very distinctive qualities, and this allowed for a far richer narrative in which each dwarf is a brilliantly drawn character who can either embellish the tale with comedy or play the part of the foil. Grumpy in 1937 was used to show the transformation the dwarves undergo in Snow White's presence as he transitioned from the cynical, the standoffish, the grumpy refusenick into the one who, if anything, was most distraught at Snow White's apparent death. The last grace Snow White performed for the dwarves before eating the apple was to bake a pie for Grumpy specifically and to say a prayer in the hopes that he would come to like her as well. Dopey was the fan favorite, but Grumpy was the most important of the seven because he demonstrated the effects of her kindness. The remake, though, well, it de-emphasizes that. It does understand the narrative purpose of it, but it refits it for Dopey instead. Rather than the distinctly feminine kindness and grace softening hard hearts, 2025 has Snow White blandly and vaguely encouraging Dopey to find his voice, because the point we're making here is that she is becoming a leader who inspires her people. I think this was always doomed to be more boring than its progenitor, but it's made redundant because the dwarves themselves are redundant to the story. The movie has them tell us that they've lived here for 275 years, which, like their magic glowing hands, has absolutely no bearing on anything else in the movie, and I do not know why they put it there. Fair enough if Lord Farquaad inspired Dopey to find his voice, and with his new confidence he went on to play some major role later in the plot, but he doesn't, because the movie is really just interested in selling Lord Farquaad's qualities as a leader. When she assumes that lofty position, everybody else's arc is subordinated to it. She doesn't inspire them to action, she inspires them to stand behind her while she takes action. So again, what's the fucking point? Besides Dopey, Grumpy is still just about individuated, but the only other dwarf with any kind of distinctive characteristic is Duck, whose gimmick is that he can paraphrase the kind of shite you might hear on the Marxism subreddit.
They're actually a band of erstwhile actors whose sustenance was made unstable by the Queen's greedy economic policies, which forced them into a liminal space where ethics and motives are ill-defined.
Again, this isn't relevant to anything, and unlike the less important dwarves in the original, it's not funny either. It's not imaginative. It reminds me of the Barbie movie preaching about the evils of Citizens United, in that it makes you think, what the fuck? Who the fuck is this for? And at least Barbie was intended for older audiences. This, by contrast, is a kids movie. What the hell is a kid supposed to make of that? I'm pretty sure this is just the writers writing for themselves. It's childish in the sense of Arrested Development, in the sense that they have an in-joke which is shared by about 5 people and they forget the distinction between their in-group and the out-group. They assume that their incredibly clever thing will be appreciated for its genius even by the general population who is more intelligent than they are. It is not childish in the sense of wonder and imagination, which is the truly useful and valuable way we can invoke childish entertainment.
My name is Snow White.
Snow White? Princess? I say it's a trap. The people nearly forgot there ever was a princess named Snow White.
The rest of the dwarves are pretty much reduced to their Borg-like fairy tale status, and I have absolutely nothing else to say about them. Wherever they're not completely horrifying, they're just boring, made even more so by the fact that this goes nowhere. Besides Dopey learning to overcome the bullies, which, by the way, is a shit treatment for these lovable characters. Just imagine, if Snow White hadn't showed up, Dopey might have become a school shooter. But besides that, the entire dwarf section is an intermission. What do I mean by that? Well, when Snow White ran away from the kingdom, her goal was to get as far away as possible, as fast as possible. She even reminds us of this when she wakes up.
Where are you going? As far away from the castle as possible.
Her taking a nap contradicts her reason for being in the house to begin with. It only makes sense as a narrative pause button to enable the movie to steal, and make worse, a scene from the older movie. As discussed, everything that takes place in the house is separate from the A-plot. Nothing about it will impact later events in any meaningful way. And after the perfunctory house cleaning section, where Snow White tells them to clean their own house,
And he'll use a broom.
Me?
And I'll use the broom.
there is then one of the most jarring transitions I have ever seen in a movie.
When I was a little girl, every day was like this. When my father was king. What if he's still alive? I have to find him.
While all this has been going on, Class A is happening back at the castle as well. Remember when Gal Gadot told the hunter to bring back Lord Farquaad's heart in a box? Seemed pretty important. It's why she asked for it after all, but it's not so important that she actually bothered to open the box when it was given to her. It's just been sitting on a shelf the whole time, waiting to become relevant again. The only reason she thinks to open it now is because the mirror is still deluded enough to think that Lord Farquaad is the fairest of them all. Only after it said this does she go to check the box, and inside she finds an apple. She finds the huntsman replaced the heart with an apple. What if she'd been sensible and opened it straight away? That's a scene I'd have liked to see. The hunter goes back, gives her the box, she opens it, she pulls out a fucking apple, she looks at him with contempt as he shuffles awkwardly because he was a complete spanner and he thought that he could trick the queen by putting an apple in place of a heart in a box. The only way this works is if he'd read the script, so he knew she wouldn't open the box immediately for some fucking reason. The 1937 movie got this right. The huntsman in that version put a pig's heart in the box. There was a perfectly good device right there. Why do you keep changing things when your ideas are so stupid? The apple discovery does occasion our big Gal Gadot musical set piece, and it's it's very, very funny. I really wish I could play the whole thing because it's all just so wonderful. I think Fringy summed it up with words to the effect of, she can't act and she can't sing, so I don't know why they wanted her to do both. What this is just peak miscasting, and that is why it's genius. It's like asking Arnold Schwarzenegger to play Hamlet, but unironically.
Something is rotten in the state of Denmark, and Hamlet is taking out the trash.
Stay thy hand, fair prince.
Who said I'm fair?
I don't think Arnie would have let himself be auto-tuned to this extent though, and it's a shame that Gal did. She really should have lent fully into the absurdity of the thing, but to be fair, she leans quite far into that, so we shouldn't be too picky about it. Somehow this circus performance leads to her sending a whole bunch of armed guards that I guess she just ordered in from Temu because she has those now. Oh, fuck me, she's still not done. Now she's done. Over with Grumpy of House Dinklage, the movie tries to insist that this dopey is really not a simpleton.
Just because his name is Dopey doesn't mean he's actually a...
Then, out of a sense of obligation, the movie does its pastiche of the house cleaning song, in which Lord Farquaad makes the dwarves her slaves. The writers don't quite see it that way. The lead-in is that these small-statured communities start arguing because Grumpy accidentally dropped a hammer on somebody, and this prompts Lord Farquaad to give them a lecture on the importance of working together, because the new point of this scene is not that she is bringing civilization to the uncivilized world of men. Oh no, it's that she's proving her leadership qualities by bringing disparate peoples into her rainbow coalition.
Vote for Kamala Harris, and it's actually non-negotiable.
Yeah, that went well, didn't it? Better luck next time. Dopey gets sad, and so in what is probably the closest the movie gets to even a semi-strong scene, admitting all the qualifications already mentioned, she teaches him to whistle. But this is far too close to good than the movie is comfortable being, so then it gets scared of itself and it goes promptly back inside, where Lord Farquaad can wave her metaphorical whip around.
Is this normal? 275 years is a long time to argue. It seems to me that everyone here could do a much better job at listening to one another.
This doesn't really work, given A, they have worked together for coming on 3 centuries, and there's been no indication that their work has suffered for their discord. B, there's been absolutely no indication that they are bad at their jobs individually or as a collective. C, they were introduced working together. The whole point of this scene in the original isn't that the dwarves hate and ignore each other to the detriment of their work, it's that men who focus solely on work miss the civilizing influence at home. What they lack is comfort, cleanliness, and a reason beyond work to enjoy life. They need somebody to domesticate them. But they absolutely work together, chaotically at times, but they have their various ways of stopping Sneezy from sneezing, for example. They understand and they don't judge Dopey. There's no ill feeling toward Grumpy, despite him being a grumpy dick. They don't need somebody to come in and lead them, for fuck's sake. They need somebody to make their house into a home, to show them manners, to teach them grace. It's a point about the complementarity of the sexes. It's also a bit jarring to be told by a jumped-up starlet who's never worked a day in her life that she knows what work is and how to do it together, given that she just tanked an entire collective production at the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars and several thousand poor employees. What the fuck does any character played by Rachel Zegler have to teach us about labor and teamwork?
When we're a team, the house will gleam, so whistle while you work.
Yeah, I think I honestly prefer that slave driver in Mordor, because at least he doesn't fucking sing at me while he's making me march to my doom. Then we get what is by far the funniest part of the movie, which is the 1xBet pirate Indians giving their opinion on the movie. God, you know it's bad when you've lost the Indian gamblers from the piracy sites. And then, 30 seconds after the song concludes, Snow White remembers that her father might be alive. God, it's so unbelievably janky. There's not even an attempt at a segue. It's as if God from Monty Python showed up and told her to get back to the plot.
Oh, I am enjoying this scene.
Get on with it!
You could have smoothed it with an interruption. For example, if the scenes were moved around so you had the entire Peter's Tiny Dinklage section, which ended with the song, then you cut away for the Queen and her musical number, then you could return to the midget jamboree and pick up sometime later, with the passage of time being our excuse for picking up with a new subject and plotline. To be honest, I think we'd still have needed some kind of external prompt. For example, a bunch of bandits might arrive who are loyal to her father, who tell her that they believe he is still alive, that the Queen lied about what happened to him. That'd do. They would join the dance for her and provide her with new and definite motive. As it is though, the movie actually scans more cleanly if you skip the dwarves entirely and go straight to her later meeting with the bandits, which rather bolsters my point about the cut and paste obligation. The writers evidently had a story they wanted to tell and the dwarves simply didn't feature in it at all. They weren't worked into the script so much as they were dropped on it unceremoniously.
It's time for me to stop hiding. Thank you all for showing me such kindness.
It's not though. She's still in hiding. She's just going to go and meet some bandits who are also in hiding. Movie! Learn English! Happily for the plot, this world generally, and this forest in particular, is absolutely tiny, so Lord Farquaad can just walk off, and 5 minutes and a weird screen wipe later, she can encounter first the bandits, and then immediately afterwards the Queen's soldiers. The bandits weren't looking for her, and the soldiers didn't know where to look, because unlike the fairy tale and the 1937 film, the mirror doesn't tell the Queen where she is or who she's with, which makes both of these meetings stupidly convenient.
I had no choice but to run. The Queen wants me dead.
What are you doing? Is this acting? Is this what you think acting is? Having by sheer dumb luck saved Lord Farquaad from the soldiers, Purple Pain does indeed confirm that he believes the Queen lied about the King's death and has heard rumors that he was merely taken prisoner in the Southern Kingdom.
You have no idea where he is.
Oh, I'm so sorry at this point.
Hey, have you tried the Southern Kingdom? Because it sounds like he might be in the Southern Kingdom, because you just said rumor has it he was taken prisoner in the Southern Kingdom. It's another example of this static world, by the way. These rumors are bound, we are told. Rebels and loyalists believe them. Did nobody think to spread them in the city? The plebs are crying out for the return of the king, and I'm so sorry for dragging you into this movie. I won't ever do it again. Go back and be brilliant somewhere else. Spreading those rumors would be the best way to undermine the already unpopular Queen.
You must have mistaken me for a knight in shining armor.
I don't think anyone's making that mistake.
I don't know, people seem to think you're Snow White. There's a lot of mistakes around at the moment. Lord Farquaad says only her father can restore the kingdom to what it used to be. Purple Pain says, nah, it's too late for that, we're all fucked forever.
Obviously you've forgotten how things used to be, when people were kind and fair.
Oh god, she said the word again. The movie thinks this is a really clever setup. What it's setting up is a bomb that will go off in its face, but it thinks this is a smart thing to do. Also, did nobody catch the inconsistency? Not 3 minutes ago, Lord Farquaad remembered that Purple Pain claimed that he was a bandit loyal to the king. Now she's accusing him of forgetting how great things were under the king he claims he's fighting for. Pick a goddamn lane. And this leads us to Purple Pain's song, which is, frankly, out of place. It's called Princess Problems, and the thrust of the lyrics is, you are a silly, pampered girl living in a mythical world where justice and fairness are prized qualities, when in reality they're not, and the world's gone to shit, so a man's got to look out for number one. Far be it from me to defend Lord Farquaad, but the Queen murdered her dad, turned her into a maid, drove her out of the castle, tried to kill her, and now has soldiers hunting her through the woods. This song might have worked if we'd had it in their first meeting in the pantry, but it only works here if you completely ignore everything that's happened to these characters since the pantry. On the whole, I'm in favor of ignoring as much of this movie as possible, but it's a bad sign when that's the writer's attitude as well. Also, the fucking auto-tune again. You'd think, given they must have known this movie would lean on its musical numbers, they might have picked actors who could sing. The song segues into the meeting with the rest of the bandits, and oh my goodness, somebody call the cops, there's an actual fucking midget in the movie. Then suddenly, because I don't even care, the soldiers attack. I guess they were lured here by all of the terrible singing. You really shouldn't do big musical set pieces when you're on the run from an evil queen and you know her soldiers are poking around 5 minutes down the road. The bandits are outnumbered 2 to 1. We are quite explicitly told that this is the case. Purple Pain pretends to give himself up so Lord Farquaad can run away. And what the fuck is that on your head, sir? But it turns out that Purple Pain's grand plan is for he and his bandits to walk out into the open with their hands up and then just kind of start fighting. How did you gain any advantage from this maneuver? All you've done is expose your entire company to the soldiers. They didn't even know how many of you there were until you all walked out into the open. They've got ranged weapons. You should all be dead.
Not a great plan.
To nobody's surprise at all, the bandits get overpowered and surrounded. But then, Lord Farquaad and her animal friends concoct a cunning plan to lure the soldiers away, and naturally they all toddle off after her, even though they've just captured an entire group of armed bandits, who we were explicitly told they had outnumbered 2 to 1. You could have done both, you brain-fucked muppets. What are you doing? I know Rachel Zegler is borderline anorexic, but she's not in there. Because this movie just plods between scenes and makes no effort at all to join them together properly, the escape, which is incomplete by the way, they've only run a short distance from the soldiers, well that just kind of thuds into the next conversation, where we see that Purple Pain is impressed by Lord Farquaad's cunning, and now he wants to fuck her probably. I do hope he bought a machete, because he'll need to hack his way through a jungle before he gets in there.
The people, they've forgotten how it used to be, and they despise the Queen, but they're afraid. The parents weren't afraid of anything. They gave everyone hope.
Oh, quit your flirting, you poncy rascal. Women just go weak at the knees for this sort of thing. Bitches love sterile reiterations of the theme. It makes them quiver. It's pretty fucking confused, though. My people have forgotten what life used to be like. They hate the Queen, but they're too scared to fight her. That is why we fight her in your father's name, because he makes us all brave. Which is it? Are you a bunch of cowardly British cigarettes, or are you not? Because you seem to be trying to have it both ways. Although, with a haircut like that, I'm not at all surprised to learn that's how you like it. And then confusion occurs. A random enemy crossbowman appears from nowhere and takes aim at Lord Farquaad. Purple Pain hears him coming and stands up. The crossbowman gets clubbed over the head by a teleporting bandit just as he releases his bolts. We cut back and... oh dear, Purple Pain has been shot. Her fucking face, Jesus Christ. I'm confused though, because what does the movie want us to take away from this? Does it want us to think that he bravely took the bolt meant for her? Or does it want us to think the mystery teleporting bandit caused the crossbowman to miss? Why would you not have him take the shot, then have the crossbowman swarmed by the bandits in response? You've just muddled it all up, movie. For all we know, Purple Pain made no attempt to stop him shooting Lord Farquaad, and he just got shot himself in an unhappy accident. I don't understand how this got past the scripting process without somebody pointing out that it's a load of wank. Still, pretty sure it's not the first time somebody shot a bolt all up in Purple Pain. He's probably used to it by now. It feels distinctly like a reshoot because it's totally inconsequential and the rest of the movie once again works without it. Or, well, you know, it doesn't work without it, but it doesn't work more harmoniously without it, which actually makes no sense. It works better if you skip it, is what I'm trying to say. They take the injured Purple Pain back to the heightless community so Doc can pull out the bolt and or do surgery. Yeah, don't worry, Doc acknowledges that he's not actually a doctor, he's just a miner, and because the movie made a joke about it, it doesn't have to make sense. The movie barely even suggests that Purple Pain is at death's door, and he's perfectly fine and on his feet again within about 5 minutes. We spend less time worrying about his fate than we spent suffering the new version of Heigh-Ho. It's as if the movie is terrified of having the audience feel anything for its characters. Well, you know, anything but disgust.
I am the Rebel Quig, master of the crossbow.
Oh, hello. You give the strong impression you were added in reshoots too, because they read the bad press about their midget erasure and tried to course correct. This guy has, I think, 3 lines in the entire movie, 4 at most, and 2 of them are him announcing his own name.
I am the Rebel Quig, master of the crossbow. I am the Rebel Quig, master of the crossbow.
Not that I've been paying a huge amount of attention, because I watched this movie and made this video in a weird kind of fugue state. I think my mind was in self-preservation mode. But how often have I said that something seems like it was added in reshoots? Is it by now in reference to most scenes in the movie? Because it really is true of most scenes in the movie. Maybe their cunning plan was to make all the bits so awful and cheap looking and rushed that you couldn't tell which the original shots were. I think they call that the Marvel approach. The Bandits and the Dwarves have an obligatory falling out for basically no reason save that the writers wanted an excuse to have Lord Farquaad be a leader, again.
This is exactly how the Queen would want us to behave. She's poisoned everyone into believing that it's everyone for themselves.
Lady, you realize you're talking to two distinct groups of people, right? The dwarves have lived in the same fucking house for 275 years. They have absolutely no prior connection to events in the kingdom, and Purple Pain told us not all that long ago that his group of bandits fight together in the name of the king because it makes them brave. I get that you really want to drive home the theme here. The Queen divides and conquers. Lord Farquaad becomes a leader because she's able to establish class consciousness. But basically nothing in your script actually supports your goal, writers. You do actually have to make sure that your protagonist's grand speeches about the world describe the world you've shown us, you omni-incompetent clown people. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry, that's racist. You people of clown. So Lord Farquaad tells them to believe in each other. Then she demands that the homunculi fix Purple Pain, which they do, so now Purple Pain is fine. 2 minutes. There were exactly 2 minutes between him getting shot and him being fine. Why did you even fucking bother?
I would do anything for Snow White's special friend.
No, no.
No. They've had 3 short scenes together and they didn't have time to flirt because they were too busy talking about the fucking theme. How desperate must you be if you're willing to put it away in Rachel Zegler after about 5 minutes of shared screen time? Actually, wait, no, that probably helps. It's the people who'd still do it after 5 minutes in her company. They're the ones I'm worried about.
You know what time it is, fellas?
Time to dance!
Why? Why is it time to dance? Surely there are better and more important things to do than dance? Okay, fine, I guess not. Chief Pygmy of the Crossbow gets his second of 3 lines, or maybe it's the second of 4. Point is, it's the second of far too few to make him into a character. Damn near everybody in this movie is there as a means to an end, the end being to shove the plot along as graciously as possible whilst blowing as much smoke up Rachel Zegler's tiny puckered asshole as possible. So Lord Farquaad randomly decides to point out that Crossbow Midget and some random bint we've never met seem pretty close. And this is his excuse to say, hey, when are you and Purple Pain gonna bone? And all of this was done so that the boning could be fulfilled.
He saved your life?
Acting.
I used to think that the way through the woods would be lonely.
Singing.
Maybe wherever this road goes, I won't have to walk it alone.
You really have to watch the whole thing. I mean, don't. It's really not worth it. Save yourself. But you really do have to watch the whole thing to appreciate just how perfunctory everything is. Absolutely none of this gets any kind of space to breathe. No flesh is put on bones. There is nothing approaching characterization. There's barely even a script here. There's just a plot outline with headings like, now they sing, meet the dwarves, she falls in love, and there's no text underneath them. When we discussed on EFAB the one word we would choose to describe the movie, I chose masochistic because almost every single plot beat seems to resent its own existence. They don't want the dwarves to be here, they just know they have to be. They don't want the love story, they just know they have to have one. It's what gives the movie that and then quality. The remarkable thing, though, is that it's really hard to detect what scenes and plot threads they really did want to include beyond the absolute bare bones Lord Farquaad becomes a leader arc. The Zegler creature spends a lot of this song disconcertingly warbling directly into the camera, which has you shuffling awkwardly in your seat, hoping that the Eye of Sauron will look at something else. And when the duet portion starts, the movie's unceasing desire to be as generically Broadway as possible sees the two of them belting at each other from close range, which is, frankly, embarrassing. They look like two work rivals trying to outdo each other at the Christmas party karaoke. It's almost as embarrassing as pretending like somebody might actually be capable of falling in love with the Zegler creature. The song ends, and the movie, having long ago given up any pretense at being a serious production, transitions to the next beat with all the care and grace of a high-speed collision. Once again, I really don't think you should have been dancing around and belting empty words at each other while you know you're being hunted by soldiers, you thundertards. Purple Pain decides, I think, to try and lead the soldiers away. Again, to protect the princess.
I'm coming with you.
No, that would defeat the object, you dozy mongoose. I know we're supposed to find these widely spaced eyes attractive. I, for one, would rather there was something more than the cold vacuum of space between them. Purple Pain arbitrarily states that he will return in 2 days' time. Yeah, at first light on the second day, at dawn, look to fucking anywhere, I guess. It's all a green screen, nothing's real. Why am I here? What am I fighting for again? What's the point of living? Am I really alive? He can't promise this because who knows how long it'll take him to evade the soldiers. And hey, what happens if he gets captured? He's useless. He's going to get captured again. Fails a stealth roll, 2 out of 2. He should really respec into a non-retarded class, but he won't. We're in a movie. And even though they know Lord Farquaad is at risk, and even though the whole reason for him leaving is to mitigate that risk, and even though she can't come with him because the point is to protect her at all costs, we cannot be letting silly little things like the character's stated motives interfere with the needs of the plot. So, Lord Farquaad gives Purple Pain the character establishment necklace she's carried from the beginning of the movie.
I can't accept this.
I'm not giving it to you. Just giving you reason to return.
She's very concerned he might forget how stunning and brave and fearless and fair she is, so she's given him a necklace with those words written on it, so he'll remember how stunning and brave and fearless and fair she is. It's basically a shopping list. They're already married.
The guards are waiting in the cottage.
Hey, thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Wait, who are you again? Even though Purple Pain was sold to us as a roguish bandit who's been living in the woods and fighting against the Queen for many years, he is not so experienced a woodlands bandit that he knows how to spot the type of trap he must surely have used himself to catch his food.
Steadfast, loyal. You're an idiot.
So he gets teleported back to the castle and brought before the Queen. Gal Gadot's hand makes a late bid to replace her face as the film's biggest star.
Oh yeah, the lady with the good potatoes.
She asks Purple Pain where Lord Farquaad is, and he affects ignorance. But oh no, oh dear, oh drat and bother, how inconvenient. He's wearing her stupid necklace, because of course he is. When your setup and payoff is this bad, it might genuinely have been better if you hadn't bothered. Just lean fully into randomness. Have Dumbledore teleport in on the back of an X-Wing and say she's in the attic. Now you might still be wondering, but hey, how does this help the Queen? She knows Purple Pain has met Lord Farquaad, she knows he's protecting her, but she doesn't know where they were because the whole point of Purple Pain's plot was to lead the soldiers away from Dinklefell.
Show me where you found him.
That's not going to work.
I'm sure you think you got this licked, Your Majesty, but trust me, you'd know what you're up against. See, unlike you, I know her.
I think you mean you.
Oh, you're so evil. You're not gonna fucking kill him though, are you? Yes?
Nothing! I think it's time for Snow White tonight to have a little talk.
Oh god, you're not gonna kill her either, are you? The Queen goes into her bedroom lab for her transformation into the Old Crone. This was another incredibly vivid and well done section of the original, which understood that there was a finality about the scene. It wasn't just conveying generic horror, it was the final transformation, the most wicked thing the Queen could do, and the moment her fate was set, the entire world reacts to her as she makes her potion. She invokes all the the most terrible facets of nature as she poisons the apple. There was no coming back from this moment. Not only is it visually brilliant, it's thematically profound. It is the point of no return. There's magic in it, not just in the potion the Queen brews, but in how the movie showed her doing it. All in all, it's a pretty inspired sequence. But in this version, the Queen walks to a table, she pours a couple of vials into a cup, there is some vague purple smoke, and Gal Gadot attempts to sing again, which means it's impossible to take it seriously. The bit they were most proud of was the transformation itself, which they wanted to make happen on screen and as seamlessly as possible. This is a purely technical achievement, and they succeed in the sense that they do make it look pretty seamless, but it's the same soul-sapped approach to art that you find in something like Avatar. The only people who will admire it are the people who are interested in the behind-the-scenes science that made it happen. The actual story it tells is unspeakably generic. Because we see it happen as it happens, because it is seamless, there's no suspense, there's no tension, there's no morbid curiosity, and there is no shock at the revelation. All things the original used to sublime effect. In this version, you just see Gal Gadot age blandly past the wall, though, to praise it as much as I can, this mixture of what I guess is prosthetics and CGI has the effect somehow of improving Gal Gadot's acting. I think it might be because her natural face is so perfectly seamless that when she makes any kind of expression, it appears exaggerated. But when she's actually got all the old hag wrinkles, her face movements look more natural. Original Gal Gadot acting is like somebody using a bad AI to animate the Mona Lisa. It's uncanny because it's not supposed to move. Old hag Gadot looks more human than the actual human playing her. How's that for a backhanded compliment? There's a vulture in the room with her, which I'm pretty sure we've never seen before in the movie, but it's there because there were vultures in the old film. They were a pretty clever foreshadowing device in that context, symbols of death that they are. When they eagerly watch as the dwarves chase the Queen up the mountain, it lets you know that the world itself knows what's happening and what it all means. To describe the vultures circling is, after all, to say that death and doom is near at hand. In this movie though, well, the vulture's just there because it is. Evil, I guess. The link is vaguely evil. And I'm sorry to keep doing this, but my god, the fucking music. You can't have a transformation scene, a transformation that even mentions a transformation in the voice, and end it with Crone Gadot belting out the final lines as if absolutely nothing has changed. It's so fucking artless that I am genuinely offended. People were paid to make this. People who call themselves artists. Over at Harrensmall, seat of House Midget, Lord Farquaad reminds us that she still really wants to find her father, and because there's no clear reason why she should choose now of all times to remind us, it inevitably means that the next scene requires it. Then, who should rock up outside but Crone Gadot and her pet vulture? And again, I ask futilely, how did you know where to come? Nobody told you, the soldiers didn't know, Purple Pain didn't fess up. How are you here? If you knew where to come, why didn't you just send more soldiers to capture her and bring her to the castle? And wait, you can't give her an apple? Why would Lord Farquaad even eat an apple in this situation? She's not kind and naive in this movie. Well, I mean, maybe she's naive, but she's not kind. That would be sexist. What possible reason would she have to take an apple?
I have come with a message from Jonathan. I'm afraid he's been captured by the Queen.
Oh, really? Say, suspicious old hag I've never seen before, old crone you. Nice pet vulture, that's not at all evil. How exactly did he get that message to you if he's been captured by the Queen?
He gave me this necklace.
Oh, really? Say, suspicious old hag, old crone you, who's turned up with a message she can't logically have received. How exactly did he get that necklace to you if he's been captured by the Queen?
I need to go to him.
Her neck functions like the nose cone of the Concorde jet. Extend for urgency. Pretty sure the Concorde jet had more range though. Ah, aeroplane jokes, gotta love them. Gadot stops her and says, "But what about the danger? You might get hungry on the road. Here, take the apple."
Take this apple to sustain you on the road.
They can't appeal to character because Lord Farquaad doesn't have one of those. They've been reduced to calories.
I remember how generous your father was to his people. That's why it is an honor for me to return the favor to his daughter. I know I don't have much to give. But giving you this apple makes me feel as though his spirit is here.
Oh, come on.
For him. For your father.
Come on! The movie tries to make this seem tense by cutting between this gormless idiot and the dwarves and the animals racing back to rescue her, but it doesn't work because she's about to become the victim of natural selection. She has no reason to believe this story, no reason to take the apple, and no reason to eat the apple now when it was pitched to her as sustenance for the road. She fucking deserves to die. If anything, the apple's too good for her.
What's happening? Something's wrong.
You didn't need to tell us that. You could have tried acting. Gadot says, "Ah ha 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 ha. I did know your father. I knew him quite well." Actually, fuck it. There's no point me doing a funny voice because there's already one of those in the movie.
I did know your father quite well. What do you mean? I knew he was a fool.
I pity the fool.
It was almost too easy for me to have him killed. His goodness cost him his throne, as it will cost you your life.
And that's it. That's the end of the father subplot. They unironically went with, he disappeared and died. Wait, maybe he isn't dead. No, he definitely isn't dead. We must find him. Oh shit, no, he's actually dead. This doesn't work on any level, but it especially doesn't work because if you'll recall, the huntsman said,
"She's a liar. You were never told the truth about your father."
If the queen lied about your father and you believed the queen lied about your father, then the one person whose word you cannot take about your father is, the fucking queen. Movie, what are you doing? But the overarching point is, why? What the fuck was the point? Why even broach the question when the answer is that there was no question to answer? If anything, the one most guilty of peddling misinformation is the fucking huntsman. And maybe also Purple Pain, he's the one who related those rumors about the king being alive. You get the tiniest sense that maybe, just maybe, there were a few reshoots in this movie? The only alternative is that what the script is aiming at, with all the accuracy of a blind man with Parkinson's, is Lord Farquaad discovering independence. What this is supposed to show her is that for her to become the stunning and brave and fierce strong leader she was always meant to be because it was written on the back of her necklace, she has to, become the stunning and brave and fierce and strong leader she was always supposed to be. What this script might be aiming at is the good old-fashioned she don't need no man trope, that waiting on her father to return was the childish dream state, and that learning he'll never come back is the impetus she needs to transform into Stalin the White. That's certainly a viable explanation, but it really didn't need the aborted, also my father mystery to function. If we're going to keep that, she can't go from believing he's dead to believing he's dead. She should learn something from his death. She should realize something from the example he set. If, for example, she believed he'd died fighting that war in the Southern Kingdom, and then she learns that in fact he died fighting the Queen to save his family and his kingdom, she would realize, and I'm just spitballing here, it would require more flesh than I can be bothered to put on it, but she would realize that it's not enough to hope. It's not enough to dream. The essence of being a leader is to fight for what's right no matter the odds, which would lead her from childhood to adulthood, from princess to leader, from daughter to following the father's example. But this weird metastasized tumor of a script we're actually looking at, it's terminally fucked.
Who is the fairest one of all?
and Lord Farquaad dies, wondering just what the fuck she's on about, because this has never been a topic of conversation between them. The small folk of Harrensmall return, and they are very sad because this jumped up minor royal who bossed them about is dead. Oh dear, what a shame. Quick, Doc, quote Trotsky at her, that'll do the trick. Oh, what's that? You've got nothing? Oh no, oh that's a shame. Back in the castle, the magic mirror tells Gal Gadot that she is an evil bitch and he's quite appalled, but at least she's the sexiest bitch of all. Because she's transformed back, you see. Because the movie missed the point of the original. Again, the transformation was functionally irreversible in 1937 because it showed the end point of vainglorious jealousy. The point was that the queen could never win because her pursuit of beauty made her ugly. What this movie has done, and remember it wants to de-emphasize the importance of looks when discussing feminized virtue, is to emphasize looks. Because now you actually can win by killing people who are prettier than you. If fences could speak, Chestertons would be screaming. You do not make changes unless you understand the point of the things you're changing, you fucks. Over with the midgets, nobody's bothered making her that lovely coffin she had in the fairy tale or the deathbed she was given in 37. Nope, she's just laid out on a rock. The animals gathered around are beginning to wonder just how long has to pass before they are allowed to consume her. To give it as much credit as possible, even though the establishing stuff really isn't there, the movie does understand that the most evocative face in this moment is Grumpy's. Albeit where the original gave him that arc I've mentioned, this one really just uses him as a delta. He had the hardest face, so seeing him cry provides the dramatic contrast and lets you know just how sad everything is. Of course, the really sad thing is that this is what the dwarves have been reduced to. Their freaky as fuck appearance. It's Dopey I feel most sorry for. He used to be memorable. While all this has been going on, more stupid has been occurring in the castle dungeons. For an evil queen, the evil queen has this remarkable aversion to killing people, so not only does Purple Pain remain alive, but the huntsman does as well. There is a skeleton in the next cell, but the implication there is that he was sent to jail and they just kind of forgot about him, so he starved. Purple Pain and the huntsman are in the same cell. Purple Pain is pulling on the chain that binds him, because even though he was introduced as a cunning rogue, they never bothered to actually make that a part of his functional character, so he doesn't use any of the skills you might expect a rogue to have. He doesn't, for example, pick the lock or hatch some other cunning escape plan. Nope, he's just here yanking on his chain. The huntsman says, "Don't be an idiot, that's not going to work." But Purple Pain says, "I'm not going to stop because here, let me tell you about the theme again, like every other fucking line in the movie."
I forgot what it was to have courage.
You led a bunch of bandits in a years-long struggle against the dictatorial queen. No, you fucking didn't.
I have hope, but then I met Snow White.
Wait a minute, didn't you recently say,
"That's why we fight in your father's name. The parents weren't afraid of anything. They made us all feel a little braver. They gave everyone hope."
But no, I guess we have to glaze Lord Farquaad's desiccated, corpseified asshole.
She fought for us. With us. When she had every reason to run.
Are you sure? Because there were two quite clear selfish reasons for her to stay. She wants your dick, and via your dick, she can retake the throne. Really, what's happened here is that she's mirrored the evil queen's use of her own father, but the mirror doesn't quite realize the irony in that. Purple Pain says that she never gave up on them, so he'll not give up on her, and this gives the huntsman a solid 150 IQ idea. What if we both pull on that chain together? Because it sounds like the theme will make that work.
Come on, pull harder.
Oh, look, it worked. You could have been out of here a day ago, or however long it's been. Time's becoming a bit hazy at this point, to be honest. But you didn't, because you hadn't been reminded of how stunning and brave and awesome and cool and perfect Lord Farquaad is. Even though you let her go in the first place because you realized she was all of these things. There are no guards protecting the dungeons, obviously, and questions of time and distance never occur to the editor, so they waltz straight out of the dungeon and Purple Pain covers the nebulous distance between castle and Harrensmall with the aid of a horse and a screen wipe. He stumbles upon the homunculi just as they're about to tuck in for lunch, and he sees that Lord Farquaad is dead. This poses existential questions for the movie, because although it's obliged to have him revive her with a kiss, it's going to be quite hard for her to give consent, given that she's deceased. This kind of thing is very important to Hollywood these days, because they realized about 5 years ago that raping young actresses, that's a bad thing now. Hitherto, Hollywood sexual ethics were more or less aligned with the Taliban's. So now they go out of their way to tell us that they're modern and they don't consider vaginas a form of payment. The problem is they've kind of overcorrected. The Little Mermaid was the funniest recent example when they changed the words of the song Kiss the Girl to include the line, "Use your words, boy, and ask her," forgetting that, at that precise moment, Ariel was mute. And anyway, she was the one who wanted to kiss him because she'd been cursed by an underwater witch, and if she didn't do it, she'd die. But hey, why let a good story get in the way of a dumb line, am I right? Modern Hollywood probably thinks it's better that somebody die than that they receive a kiss on the lips without signing paperwork in triplicate, so when Purple Pain goes in for his fateful kiss, he studiously misses. Luckily for Lord Farquaad, his kiss does area of effect damage, so it still does the job, and Lord Farquaad wakes up. Purple Pain will probably look back on this day with great regret in a few years, once she's taken power and begun collectivizing the farms and signing pacts with Hitler. Up she gets, and they go in for another kiss. It does look a bit like they're just mashing their faces into each other and trying to get it over with. Not exactly a romance for the ages. Mind you, were you in Purple Pain's position, would you want to go anywhere near that?
Hey, what's wrong? My father. He's gone forever.
Oh, fine, I guess we're just moving on then.
Murdered by the Queen.
What do you mean, oh no? You guys don't even have a tiny little stake in this. And damn near the whole kingdom has been operating on the assumption he's dead for however long it's been. This is the thing about returning basically to the status quo ante. It's very hard to then say that things are much worse than they were during the status quo ante. The king is dead. Oh dear. The king is still dead. Oh shit, that's terrible. Actually, it's just the same. But then a snowflake falls. It isn't winter, it's not even autumn, but hey, it's the pathetic fallacy with an emphasis on pathetic. The snowflake falls and it reminds Lord Farquaad that she was named after the weather, I guess. So now it's the time to grow up and be what she was born to be.
This kingdom is my destiny.
It is your destiny.
Normally, when people talk about taking power because it's your destiny, it's because they are the Sith. It's quite funny that this movie begins with preaching the values of, essentially, agrarian communism, and severally extols the virtues of the little man against the guy upstairs, and proselytizes for the plebs revolution, only then, out of sheer mental rot, to wind up trying to restore the monarchy. Communism, fascism, the difference really is the costume, isn't it? The rest of this song is solely there to confirm that it's now time for Lord Farquaad to do the things she could have done at any preceding points. Time to lead and not be led, etc. This marks the final and definitive breach of contract with the original movie, where Snow White never returns to her kingdom or even desires to take political power for herself. We'll go into this in more detail in the conclusion, but if you want the crux of the difference between times old and times new, besides how cheap and unimaginative times new are, it's that modern writers are incapable of conceiving of power beyond the political. It's why so many heroes wind up looking like villains. They so often desire practical and political rewards for their actions. They so often desire power in the material sense, as an end in itself, that plots are hollowed out and characters are rendered selfish. These stories so often cease to be about the nature of right and wrong, of good and bad, and they become instead competitions over authority. This is a trait of teenagers, which is why so many teenagers become unhealthily obsessed with politics and with radical movements. Trust me, most of us have been there. You'll grow out of it. They've gone from socialist utopias where everything is given to them for little to no work, the family, into a world where they're expected to earn and to contribute and to compete with others. They often aren't very good at this because they've yet to develop skills, and they see their failures as something that is wrong with the world rather rather than something that's wrong with themselves. So their political obsessions are an attempt to imagine a world that's as easy as childhood used to be. Mummy always told me my poetry was great, so the world will admire my poetry once the revolution has occurred. There's nothing essentially wrong or unexpected about this. The problem comes when it persists into adulthood, as in the case of so many Hollywood writers. Then it becomes pathological. What it tells us is that these people have failed at growing up, which, as we'll discuss in more detail shortly, is what fairy tales and old children's stories were supposed to help with. And the fact they're now employed to tell stories means this problem will compound. The original Snow White was designed to show young people in general, and young girls in particular, how to be good people, and why that matters for its own sake. Decades of cultural degradation later, the modern Snow White is designed to show young people in general, and young girls in particular, that power matters for its own sake, that you are born worthy of it, and your job is to learn how to take it. TLDR, it fucking sucks. It's made by horrible stunted people, and it's designed to produce horrible stunted people.
It's time.
Time?
Time to restore our kingdom. It won't be easy.
It will.
She'll do everything she can to stop us.
She won't. There's barely 10 minutes left of the movie. There's no time for her to put up a fight.
Let her try.
Oh, go fuck yourself, you dopey twat. Nobody likes you. You were much better when you were hand-drawn and simple. We cut away, and Lord Farquaad, now wearing revolutionary red... God, I miss the days when girls in red would get eaten by wolves. Well, she strolls unopposed into the city.
She'll do everything she can to...
Now fuck off. The midgets seem to be approaching the castle from beneath the ground, but lest you think this is leading anywhere important, it's not. They play absolutely no role in what follows. They're just taking a different route. The people in the streets who had forgotten Lord Farquaad's existence at the start of the movie recognize the sickly stench of pure virtue wafting off her, so now they all remember her existence. Nah, we're not doing that again. We've had quite enough of that. All the sheeple line up behind Lord Farquaad, and on they march. They're still faced with the problem of getting into the castle proper, though, because the gates are... actually, no, never mind, they're not shut. There's a crowd marching at the castle. They didn't think to close the doors. But the Queen's handful of guards are protecting the entrance, including the captain of the guards with his stupid hat. If I were the Queen, and if I were as evil as the movie insists that she is, I think I'd tell my crossbowman to shoot her the minute she got in range. You know, like they tried to do earlier.
I believe you're looking for me.
As a matter of fact, I believe it is you who's looking for me.
What even is this dialogue? One of you should be angry that the other one murdered your father, and the other one should be shocked that she's risen from the dead like she's Jesus. But even more pure because her name is Rachel Zegler. For no reason whatsoever, the Queen tells her guards to stand aside, and she walks across the bridge. This puts her within range of the mob we are told she has been starving and oppressing. This should really be like the fall of Gaddafi. They should be waving her around on a stick.
This is my father's house. You killed him. You stole it from him, from all of us.
Wait, is it your father's house or isn't it? Either be a monarch and live in a castle, or be a dictator who lives in the hall of the people, but make your fucking mind up. Either way, Lord Farquaad decides they've come to take it back, whatever it is.
Pretty, isn't she?
No? Have you seen her? She looks like the world's least fucked choir boy. Then the Queen reprises her entirely baffling rose versus diamond analogy.
You think you want a flower, but a flower wilts. A flower cannot keep you safe.
Not for nothing, but if the flower is analogous to the just monarchy, then she's absolutely right. All it took was a pretty face, and the king followed his dick to his death and let his wench take over the throne. I'm all for overthrowing the tyrant, but maybe you should consider creating a more stable form of government.
Maybe the decision about what's best for everyone should be left to, well, everyone.
The queen pulls out a diamond dagger to prove her point, that she is strong, powerful, unyielding, unbreakable. Then, for the sake of making some other point that I can't quite be bothered to figure out, but which I'm pretty sure doesn't meld with the diamonds after everything she was just saying, she gives the dagger to a soldier and tells him to kill Lord Farquaad in front of the people. And Lord Farquaad's appeal to the soldier is, "Hey, didn't you used to be a farmer? And you over there, you were a baker. I know your family history. Surely this outweighs the power and the economic advantage you must logically have accrued to leave those jobs and become soldiers in the first place."
I remember. Do you?
I remember.
I remember.
And I.
Even you with your funny hats? But if you all preferred your old lives, then why did you leave them?
Leave now and never come back.
The resemblance is just uncanny. The queen grabs the dagger back and goes to put us all out of our misery, but then oh dear, it gets shot out of her hand by a harmful stereotype.
I am the rebel quick, master of the crossbow.
How did you get all the way up there? Oh, I don't care. The very strong and stable diamond dagger crumbles into dust for reasons of symbolism. The midgets show up in the castle itself and are just there. That is their role. Be on the screen. Give children nightmares for life. It is a job well done. And yet, even though you'd think they'd be put there to shut off the queen's escape route, they then just disappear. So though they were standing behind her, blocking her entrance to the castle, she is still able to walk right back into the castle and up to her bedroom to chat with the mirror, meaning that she either walked right through the midgets and they did nothing to stop her, or, and more likely, she just stepped over the midgets because they are tiny, or perhaps that the movie forgot they were there 10 seconds after it put them there. Anyway, this is where the movie lays its last giant egg of solid fuck.
Famed is thy beauty, but it goes no further than the skin. For Snow White, beauty comes from deep within. And so, my queen, at last you see, she will always be more fair than thee.
So yes, we've changed the definition of the word fair in the final scene, which completely breaks absolutely everything about everything that precedes it, since by this definition the queen never was the fairest, and the mirror had no business telling her that she was. By this definition, the queen had no reason to direct her ire at Lord Farquaad, because everybody in the city is fairer than she is. She had no motive for any of her actions, going right back before the film began. Why would you go to a city full of people who are fairer than you if your ambition is to be the fairest person in the land? There's no reason for this story to exist at all. It's a good job everything leading up to it has been shit, otherwise this monumental cock-up might have caused some damage. The queen gets angry and she smashes the mirror with her scepter, but then this causes her to crumble into ashes just like her dagger did. And I have absolutely no idea what the writers are trying to say with this or why it's in the movie. It's honestly as if they wrote themselves into this corner. They couldn't think of any other way to have the queen die or be defeated, so they just had her explode for reasons. It's not even as though the mirror was the symbol of her vanity, that she had reduced herself to a reflection, thus destroying herself by destroying the mirror. It's none of those things because the mirror reforms itself and it was lying to her. So what are we saying here, film? What was this all about? You know what, you weirdly cute little bastard you? I think you might be right. So ding dong, the bitch is dead. Everybody bows to Lord Farquaad, who does her best. What, you're bowing to little old me? Faux modest bullshit face that makes you want to incur a domestic abuse charge. Finally, we jump to some time later, and we see that Lord Farquaad's benevolent monarchy has already turned into a tyrannical hermit state ruled by a cult of personality. Look at them all, wearing white just like her name. She's turned the place into North Korea and now she's forcing them all to dance. Don't be communists, kids. The final shot of the film is her smiling at the camera like she's achieved something. And that's it. That is the end of probably the worst live-action adaptation of all time, and one of the worst movies you are ever likely to see, with one of the most unlikably narcissistic actors you could ever have the misfortune to meet. It's just an abomination is what it is, and I think it means that it's time. It is time indeed, time o'clock it certainly is, that we had a serious chat about fairy tales and the point and purpose of children's stories. Because this has been the most cautionary of cautionary tales. The single strongest argument for holding kids' entertainment to the highest standards is, after all, that their quality determines the quality of the adults we must share the world with. If you wonder why this channel spends so much time breaking down the Disney adaptations, as I've made a point of doing with Peter Pan, with The Little Mermaid, now with Snow White, it is because the only surefire way of ending the tyranny of incompetence at Hollywood is to ensure the next generation is not brought up with the kind of stories being shat out by modern Hollywood. Since time immemorial, we've told stories to children in the hopes of fashioning better adults. Don't go out into the woods at night. Beware strange adults and stranger animals. Temper your wants. Practice moderation. Do not eat the gingerbread house. Learn restraint. Listen to your elders when they are wise, but know that growing up is a dangerous business. Young girls coming into beauty attract envious eyes. Be temperate in love. Do not destroy yourself for romance. Don't cry wolf for attention, you little shit. Pride comes before the fall. Slow and steady wins the race. Do not judge a book by its cover. Make promises carefully and always keep them. The frog, if loved, might be a prince. Patience is a virtue. Prudence is more valuable than trust. The historic purpose of the fairy tale has been to impart a simple moral lesson, a practical lesson, or both at once. Those timeless entries in the genre are successful because they embed observations useful to adulthood in the heightened imaginative language of children. It's one thing to say the wolf is dangerous, but getting yourself chewed up by nature's meanest fairies indicates an intellectual as well as a naturalistic foible. The same naive innocence that might get Little Red Riding Hood munched by the animal might just as easily see her preyed upon by the wolves in human form. The purpose of the fairy tale is not to fortify the child against any particular expression of danger, it's to forearm the child against danger itself. These are stories that help kids grow up both in the moral and educational sense, and in the survival of the species sense as well. The fairy tale serves a vital purpose in evolutionary psychology. One of the darkest recurring motifs across fairy stories is that of the wicked stepmother. It appears in folktales from across the world: Snow White, Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, the child who came from an egg, the well of the world's end, Fireboy, and it admits of several explanations. The Freudian psychoanalyst Bruno Bettelheim, in his book The Uses of Enchantment, was wont to read sexual jealousy into the relationship between Snow White and her wicked stepmother, which seems fair enough. The wicked queen obsesses over her loss of sexual status in the eyes of the mirror, and her murderous pursuit of the younger and prettier girl transfers a mundane competition over looks into a generalized morality play about the uglifying sins of jealousy and narcissistic vanity. Narcissus loses himself in his reflection. The queen's reflection leads directly to her death. But, like most priests of the dead religion of psychoanalysis, the Freudian begins with a conclusion and goes in search of an argument. The older woman's jealousy of a blossoming young virgin rings true to an extent, but then Bettelheim goes on to label the dwarves an expression of permanent pre-Oedipal masculinity, and he stubbornly persists in his theory of sexual competition between Snow White and the Queen over the love and sexual attention of the father, despite the fact that the father, in most versions of this story, isn't even in the story to begin with. Also, like many of his kind, maintained Bettelheim was massively influential, and people only noticed he'd lied about his credentials, abused his child patients, falsified the results of his experiments, and plagiarized large sections of his work, including the uses of enchantment, after he'd died and his damage had been done. In no true science could such a man still be so influential, but as Platoon's law goes, stick the word social in front of anything, justice, democracy, science, and it ceases to be the thing it claims it is. The wicked stepmother motif, though, is recurrent and lends its name to a more robust and less sex-obsessed scientific finding. The Cinderella effect is the name given to the demonstrably and significantly higher incidence of child abuse in step-parental homes. In fact, the presence of a step-parent in the home is the single greatest determiner of child abuse, stemming from nothing more mundane than the competition for scarce resources. If you're poor, if you live a subsistence lifestyle, if you're frequently beset by famine, by droughts, floods, and all the various things that made medieval European life so precarious, nature compels the parent to favor their biological children over any holdovers from their partner's past relationships. This is the instigating factor in Hansel and Gretel, where the poor woodsman's second wife demands that he abandon his children in the woods during a famine. There are few better examples to disprove the modern myth that stories for children are allowed, or even expected to be, shallow and unserious things. You don't get a much darker lesson than that, after the death or divorce of a parent, little Jimmy should really prepare for the worst. A healthy distrust for strangers includes strangers in your own house. These are serious lessons designed to make unserious children grow up fast in a world where an active imagination can just as easily get you killed as save your life. The modern world has developed plenty of systems designed to mitigate the harsher realities of nature, but the danger in the mass assumption of safety is that the world itself comes to resemble a cautionary fairy tale. The persistence of the Cinderella effect suggests that modernity isn't quite the magically perfect end of history it was once billed to be, but the pretense that it was has been responsible for the wholesale destruction of the type of serious, formative stories that once prepared us to deal with the world as it really is. We have no need of fairy tales when we're living in one. The irony of modern childhood is that little kiddies are coddled to protect them from dangers adults won't acknowledge. They are not prepared to face the reason for their coddling. One of Bettelheim's better and more original observations was that, writing I think in the 1970s, many parents, and I quote, want their children's minds to function as their own do, as if mature understanding of ourselves and the world and our ideas about the meaning of life did not have to develop as slowly as our bodies and minds. To find deeper meaning, he wrote, one must become able to transcend the narrow confines of a self-centered existence and believe that one will make a significant contribution to life, if not right now, then at some future time. This feeling is necessary if a person is to be satisfied with himself and with what he's doing. In order not to be at the mercy of the vagaries of life, one must develop one's inner resources so that one's emotions, imagination, and intellect mutually support and enrich one another. Our positive feelings give us the strength to develop our rationality. Only hope for the future can sustain us in the adversities we unavoidably encounter. Essentially, this is an argument for old fairy tales against the modern fairy tale. It holds that confronting children with reality, weaponizing their vivid imaginations, prepares them for reality. Children's stories should be some of the most serious and important works in fiction because they will define the adults who define the world. Where those stories are absent or diluted or abstracted into a safe and unchallenging mush, the quality of adults will diminish. Having never been confronted with reality, adults will create for themselves an emotionally and intellectually stunted unreality. They will be incapable of grappling with the world as it is, and powerless against the wolves, real or metaphorical, of the forest. Adult myths, such as those we see on our screens today, will be more childish than the children's stories our grandparents read. Reality will be less real than the fairy tale. For example, it's a quirk of old fairy tales that, though most kinetic abuse is objectively carried out by men, there are hardly any wicked stepfathers. Where the father figure cops any blame in a fairy story, the kings of The Little Mermaid and Rapunzel come most readily to mind, their failure tends to be that they are rigid and overprotective. Alternatively, they were too weak to resist the wicked stepmother's demands, as in Hansel and Gretel. The usual boring explanation for this, the modern fairy tale, is that patriarchy is to blame. But feminists, like Freudians, prioritize answers before they have the facts. What really unites many of these fairy tales, especially those where the child surrogate is a female character, Snow White and Cinderella again, Rapunzel, The Little Mermaid, the White Witch and Susan in the Narnia stories, the Juniper Tree, the Six Swans, Beauty and the Beast. What unites all of these is that these are stories about female power. The wicked stepmother trope stems less from the villainization of poor women by a patriarchal society than it does from an acknowledgement that women exercise tremendous power, both over each other and over their often hapless menfolk. In several of these examples, particularly in Snow White, woman is the origin of civilization itself. Let's consider Snow White in more detail. In the Grimm version of the story, and then especially in Walt Disney's 1937 classic, Snow White is the single most powerful character in its world. This is particularly pronounced in 1937, where Disney himself made true characters of the animals and of the dwarves, who were absent and generically representative, respectively, in the folkloric source material. Snow White brings order to a chaotic world. The animals act in concert. The dwarves are civilized by her presence. They learn the basics of cleanliness and of hygiene that without her presence they would not think to exercise. Not dissimilarly, Wendy is the true protagonist of Peter Pan and that story's most powerful agent. Like Snow White, she is a maturing and a civilizing influence, and it's her accession to motherhood that is the story's ultimate expression of feminine influence. It's an odd kind of patriarchy that's brought into being, then shaped and then sustained by a matriarch. Wendy's role with respect to the Lost Boys is similar to Snow White with respect to the animals and the dwarves. The unspoken assumption is that the young woman is ultimately responsible for civilization, but she remains virtuous because, unlike the wicked stepmother, the fallen woman, she does not view her agency in terms of its raw power. Snow White, like Wendy, is unassuming. She acts in charitable and virtuous ways, without regard to her own station. Her nature civilizes the world around her. She doesn't seek to use this natural power to unnaturally shape the world around her. Snow White's meta goal is simplistic. She wants love, she wants to be loved and by a prince, but her proximate aim is always order, charity, cleanliness, and good behavior. She is the embodiment and chief agent of virtue in the world. The prince barely features in the 1937 film, which I believe is the first instance of the story even to introduce him at the beginning, and is lesser spotted still in Grimm's fairy tale. The prince isn't really a character in either. Rather, the prince is a moral reward for good behavior. In the Grimm fairy tale, Snow White does not return victorious to rule over the lands the queen forced her to flee. Rather, she goes to live with the prince in his kingdom. The wicked queen is invited to the wedding feast and cannot resist the invitation, as she is equal parts obsessed with, besotted, and terrified by the young woman Snow White has become. It's there that she meets a crueler end than Walt Disney wanted to show. Iron shoes are placed in hot coals and she is made to wear them and dance in them until she's dead. The story, which to be honest is full of plot holes, sorry Grimms, subordinates character to theme in that moment. Those lethal dancing shoes are the sum total of the queen's existence. She hasn't just earned them, she's already lived them without realizing it. The shoes work as an extension of her moral character. The universe is punishing her just as it rewarded Snow White for their innate characteristics, for their behavior, for the way they comport themselves in the world. The shoes might also work as an expression of the king's justice, since this is really our stand-in for universal morality, and the difference between power as it's exercised by men and power as it's exercised by women. The former is domineering and protecting, the latter creates the things worth protecting. It takes a bit more doing to make it an extension of Snow White's character, though you can read it as an expression of her new maturity. Having bitten the apple, symbol of knowledge that it is, and survived, she has no more sympathy for the Wicked Queen. She's overcome her childish naivety and outgrown a child's trusting kindness. But these last two both require that you read a little way beyond the story itself. Throughout the story proper, Snow White's great strength, her virtue, remains essentially childlike, which makes it also her great weakness. Her kindness to the dwarves is a kindness to strangers that earns her great affection and loyalty, but it also places her in great danger. She routinely falls for the queen's tricks because she applies her same naive goodness to everyone she meets. She has not yet learned to be discerning. Though the dwarves caution her against accepting any strangers into the house, the queen's various disguises are all sympathetic to her. Thus does Snow White almost die to an overtight corset, a poisoned comb, and finally the poisoned apple. The plot hole is, obviously, that the queen bothers with these elaborate schemes where a knife, like the huntsman's, would have done the job much more quickly and efficiently. But, symbolically, the thing that makes Snow White powerful in the tale is that she has no true conception of power. The paradox is that her powerlessness is the thing that makes her powerful. If she'd come to the dwarves with a view to bend them to her will, to manipulate them, to make them like her, to have them see things in her that are not truly there, she would surely have failed just as the queen does. The objects the queen weaponizes are symbolic of the risks that growing girls are confronted with. The corset, the comb, and the apple are all expressions of vanity and, if we want to go back to Freud, sexuality. Snow White needs the help of the dwarves and of the prince to overcome them, but she's only worthy of their help because her virtue, in both senses, remains intact. To be otherwise, to be aware of her own power, to use it to manufacture desired ends, would ultimately turn Snow White into a younger version of the evil queen. These quaint old tales convey a truth about the immense power of women that modern adaptations written by modern adult children stuck in their own childish fantasies invariably miss. In 2025 Snow White, where so much of what passes for the dialogue is designed to tell you the theme, embodied in its protagonist, described as fair, you come away with the lesson that young women should aspire to a kind of assertive political power that the movie itself is incapable of defining. What are children, and particularly young girls, supposed to learn from Snow White's example? That, on the one hand, there is no hierarchy of power, because hierarchies of power, and especially of ownership, are bad. The bounty of the land belongs to the people who work it. Bad deeds are the product of greedy economic policies. The queen hoarding wealth and luxury is evil, in part, because inequality is definitionally wrong. And yet, on the other hand, Snow White's arc culminates with the assumption of rulership, retaking her father's house, the seat of monarchic authority, which she uniquely deserves because she is, paradoxically, top of the egalitarian hierarchy. It's not a position she earns or works for, it's not a position evidenced by her good behavior, her virtue is not how she acts absent power. No, it's something she was born with. Her characteristics were literally assigned at birth, and her problem, the challenge she has to overcome, is that she merely lacks awareness of her own power. As soon as she awakens to it, and realizes how special and awesome she is, irrespective of her actions toward those less awesome than her victory is ordained. It's a fait accompli. What we have is a mongrel of the hero's and the heroine's journey, one that takes the worst cliché conclusions from each and clumsily combines them. It mangles together the vanities of male and female children. Of the male, that assertive political power and rulership of the world is the self-justifying goal. Of the female, that they are innately most deserving of other people's love, admiration, and affection, the center around which the universe must turn. The mitigating lessons of each journey type, the thing that separates the hero from the tyrant in a skillful tale, are studiously avoided in this movie. Both heroes and heroines' journeys in their traditional forms concern themselves with the person you will be at the close of the story. The journey is that which ensures Luke will not turn to the dark side like his father before him, even when his power exceeds his father's. By a similar token, it's what establishes Snow White as somebody worth defending. In both cases, with different emphases, how you act when you lack power is what determines whether you deserve it. And sometimes, often in fact, it reveals that power is neither what nor where you thought it was in the first place. But the modern Snow White omits all of this in favor of a vague and confused paean to power for its own sake. It is, simultaneously, something Snow White desires, deserves, and already has. The result is a kind of sexless matriarchy in which everybody is equal under the protagonist, except those who deny the protagonist, who are cast out of the harem. The only lesson the film imparts is that to be a modern woman, you should be fully conscious of your innate worth, and that this predetermines your right to rule the world. The new Snow White retells the distinctly modish real-world fairy tale, which has it that girls must be empowered to speak out, because anything that emanates from their bodies is brilliant and pure, and the only reason anyone would not want to listen to it is that they are a man and men are sexist. The modern Snow White believes that the thing that afflicts young women is the expectation that they must be quiet to be seen as good. This is a myth born of loud feminists who think society has a problem with the fact they speak rather than with what they speak. It's not that you're a woman, darling. It's that you're an obnoxious prat and you add nothing to the conversation. Loud, dumb men meet similar disapprobation. The difference is they don't care, and they certainly don't whine about it. Stop bleating about the consequences of your own unlikability. You don't have a right to be taken seriously when you are not a serious person, my dear. Get better or learn to take it like a man. Snow White 2025 represents the precise opposite of the message of the 1937 film and the original fairy tale. Where each of these taught children the difference between decency and narcissism, the remake elevates narcissism to a distinctly feminine virtue. What we have then, to go back to Bettelheim, is a story nominally for children, written by adults who want to skip the actual process of growing up. More than that, and more damning than that, it's a story nominally for children written by adults who have themselves skipped the actual process of growing up. Whenever one responds that, well, why so critical, it's just a kid's movie, these people are arguing, in effect, for more of this garbage. As C.S. Lewis wrote, a children's story that can only be enjoyed by children is not a good children's story in the slightest. No book is really worth reading at the age of 10, which is not equally, and often far more, worth reading at the age of 50 and beyond. If we don't start taking children's entertainment seriously again, nobody will ever grow up. That's all I've got for today. Bye 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 bye.